Good evening, everybody. This is Michelle Balderson. Thank you very much for taking your time and waiting for us to start today. I'm going to give you a presentation today. It'll approximately be half an hour in length. Many people who know me know that I love to chat and have a good conversation. And so I'm going to take a conversational approach to the topic today. And I may go over a little bit, I may or may not, depends on how much audience interaction that we have. What I wanted to talk to you today about is enabling digital trust in the age of zero trust. Really moving from manual certificate management into automation and automated certificate lifecycle management. The critical importance here. Well, let me first of all start with who I am. My name is Michelle Balderson. I'm Senior Director of Product Commercialization here at ISSQUARED. I have 25 years of experience in the security market space, and with that is that I have a extensive background from the perspective of working with small to medium business, all the way up to the largest enterprises, to global multinationals and carriers. I worked for Fortinet for 20 years of my life, established a very good knowledge base, and also focused towards operational technology. And so when we start talking about establishment of digital trust, it goes across all businesses, it goes across all enterprise, all the way through to small to medium business, right? My job here at ISSQUARED is to be able to help bring products to market space and being able to articulate those products to you, our end user customers. So let's just talk about digital transformation driving zero trust architecture. The key thing for me here is that when we start talking about businesses, digital transformation really started in 2010 with the definition of Industry 4.0 and what digital transformation is. Really, it's about being able to take processes that we've done manually or analog ways and moving them into digital processes. So every business out there is being able to move into a digital process and establishing digital processes. The key thing here is that what we need to be able to do is that we need to be able to establish digital trust. But before we start talking about digital trust, let's talk about how we establish trust from a human level perspective, and then we can start to apply that to systems. So when you meet a new human being, you usually are greeted with them with a handshake. Let's have a conversation and get to know each other. And then at that point, we start to build trust. We don't initially trust them. We have to be able to build that trust. So the handshake and the conversation and the eyes and being able to take a look at them and understand the type of human being that they are based off of how they move and what their movements are. Well, really what we're now doing within systems is being able to apply what we've been using from the perspective of being able to build trust with human beings is really then start to build digital trust and confidence within systems. So let's look at that definition of digital trust. Is the confidence that individual organizations and stakeholders place in the ability of people, technology, and processes to create secure digital environment. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. I don't expect an answer because you don't have the ability to answer me back. But I'm going to ask a question, and I'll ask a few questions, which is, when you go to a website of any company and you find that the website isn't up, what happens to your trust of that organization? Is it diminished a little bit? Or if you go to the website and the website is up, but then you go to a service inside that website where you're trying to order something, and after a few minutes, you've put a few things into your cart, and then you go back 10 minutes later and your cart is empty, and you can't figure out why your cart is empty. Well, does that break digital trust? Do you start to not trust exactly what's happening within their systems? What's the likelihood when you start to go across systems like that where they start to interact with you and they're not interacting in the way that you expect them to? What's the likelihood that you're going to actually place that order? And so the key thing here from the perspective of digital trust is that confidence that we as individuals place in the organizations that we're working with and the systems that they're building to be able to be trustworthy with our data and also with our transactions. And so when we start to think about that, we now want to be able to use systems to be able to establish digital trust, and that those systems, when I started in the computer industry 30 years ago, I'm sorry, aging myself, but 30 years ago, um, computer systems weren't first and foremost from the perspective of business. Business ran on its own. Now, when you move forward, so back then is that if email went down, oh, it's not a business critical application. But now, as we move into this digital transformed world where everything is being done digitally, we end up having an expectation of uptime, 99.99% uptime. So when we go to systems, and those systems then are down, it starts to break our trust and our trustworthiness within those systems. So what I'm going to talk about today is what we have to do from the perspective of building a foundation of zero trust architecture to be able to build digital trust, and then how certificates play into the potential outages that we see, and how we prevent those types of outages from happening with a solution from ISSQUARED. Clearly, I'm going to talk about a solution, but primarily what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus towards what is the problem space, and then talk about how we solve those solutions, or solve them with solutions. So when we move to the zero trust architecture, is a security based architecture. And as I said, I worked for Fortinet for 20 years of my life, and for the last 20, 25 years, security has really been perimeter based, which is I don't trust the internet. I trust the internal network. I'm going to put in a firewall. But several years ago, when we went into digital transformation initiatives, and that we started to expand out to cloud and into other different ways of being able to deliver services, we are no longer really focused towards an edge-based security architecture. And I'm not saying firewalls aren't needed. I've sold firewalls throughout my entire career. Firewalls are absolutely needed, but the shift to security has moved to identity. Meaning we're no longer heavily focused towards the edge firewall. We're now focused towards the identity of the user and the identity of the devices. And so when we start talking about the identity of the user, we use authentication to authenticate the user, and that's identity and access management solutions. We then will use identity and certificates and certificate management to be able to identify the device. And that device might end up being a web server. It may end up being a user's computer. It may end up being an IoT-based device. But when we don't have the ability of authenticating the user, we need to be able to authenticate the device. And then we want to be able to do both in combination, which is identity and access management from the user perspective, certificate management from the device perspective. And now in that two combinations, I end up having multi-factor capabilities of authenticating the user and the device. Then from that, to be able to build a true zero trust architecture, I then need to be able to identify the user, the device. I need to be able to encrypt that traffic from the endpoint over to the server side of the equation and the network side of the equation. And so in network security, we start to then add in next generation firewall with IPS and encryption and decryption capabilities. We want to be able to take a look at that traffic, make sure that that traffic is appropriate from the inside of the network. We then want to be able to take a look at it from the perspective of the traffic that is going towards the application. And so when we use certificates, we're using certificates today to be able to secure the internal applications. So I'm going to ask you another question. How many of you have worked within an organization where internal applications suddenly stop working? I don't know why they're not working. It might end up being a certificate that is randomly expired because we're not necessarily tracking them that effectively. And then at that point, the application stops for everybody. So if you go to a business, I went to a hardware store the other day and I wanted to buy some screws from them. But then they told me, oh, well, our POS system is down. I can't process this for you at this particular point in time, so I can't sell it to you. So my decision was to get up and move and go to another hardware store and buy it from a hardware store where their POS system was up. So certificates can cause unexpected outages because we're not necessarily effectively tracking them very well. So as we build zero trust, then at that point we need to be able to do data encryption at rest. We use certificates on either side of this to be able to encrypt and decrypt that traffic from the perspective of the application and the edge. And then we have to apply a policy. And being able to put a policy in is really never trust, always verify. And that verification is authentication. So as I'm working through a zero trust policy, that policy is basically saying, as the user and a device comes in to be able to use any service, I need to be able to not trust them and always verify them and always authenticate them, and then re-authenticate them throughout their sessions. And so therefore, then we're starting to use more and more certificates. And as we use more certificates, the problems that I'm going to describe shortly are exacerbated from that. The next step is being able to do full, complete solutions management, which is being able to manage the full zero trust architecture across the entire solution. And so from there, let's talk about zero trust, the need for an evolution in certificate management. Zero trust architectures drive the need for transactional authentication. Never trust, always verify means I need to be able to authenticate the user and the device, and I'm using certificates to be able to do that. The foundation of certificates is public key infrastructure that establishes the digital certificates, and that what we'll do is we establish trust or digital trust through secure infrastructure. I want to be able to create secure communication between one device to another, or from one user to an application. That is really being able to establish that secure infrastructure. The need for automated certificate lifecycle management is because we're going towards this zero trust architecture and we're always authenticating, we need to be able to have more and more certificates and user and device-based certificates by the thousands, and therefore then we need to be able to have an effective way of managing it. But why? Why is this happening? And the why it's happening is this, is that we've seen 75% increase in cloud intrusions. We've seen 60% increase in identity-based attacks. You notice how I said that security has evolved from the edge to identity. Now the attackers are going after identity, and to be able to secure identity, I need to be able to have certificates under the identification of the user to be able to protect the devices and the identity of the user. And so with that, that's the why. Digital trust requires us to be able to protect the landscape, the full attack surface, right? And as we're digitally transforming, we're creating greater and wider degree of attack surface, and that we need to be able to then use mechanisms like certificates to be able to reduce that attack surface, to be able to protect the system. So that's the reason why it's critically important that we're using certificates to be able to do that. This here also goes into the reason on why it's critically important that we're tracking all of these certificates and have an inventory of all these certificates, which is global trade compliance, or GDPR fines have been a total of 1.25 billion euros in 2023, and it continues to increase. They expect us to be able to track and understand all of our transactions with all of our certificates. Therefore, then as we start to move into more digital transformation, we use more certificates, we have a harder time tracking it. We need to be able to find a mechanism of being able to track it, right? Identity-based attacks, cloud intrusions have definitively increased, and that being able to establish trust between our on-site compute resources and our cloud compute resources is being able to use digital certificates to be able to secure that. If we don't do that, then we're less secure, and therefore then we have greater degree of intrusions. But if we use certificates to be able to protect our on-site to our cloud resources, then at that point we're more secure, but therefore then we need to be able to find a way of managing it. Most customers that I've had an experience with, and I'm talking about from small to medium to mid-enterprise to large enterprise, over the course of time have evolved. They've gone from manual certificate management using spreadsheets to track certificates. Many small to medium business customers that may be listening today will say, well, I only have a few certificates. Or our mid customers may say, well, I've only got a few hundred. Or our large enterprise will say, I have a few thousand. And so they manually track the certificates, but with that is that then comes along with human error. And so manually tracking of certificates causes human error, and therefore then we end up gaining lack of visibility. We can't see all the certificates because someone forgot to put the entry into the spreadsheet. It then becomes along inconsistent security policies because one system got a certificate to be able to protect the system, another system may have not, and therefore then our security policies become inconsistent. Difficulty in managing compliance standards because we can't necessarily track it because we're doing manual processes. We have an inability to be able to track all of the certificate usage and all of the transactions, and therefore then we can't meet the difficult compliance standards. And then as we're digitally growing our business, as we're using more digital services, it becomes more difficult to scale because the number of certificates that we're using is increasing exponentially, and then keeping everything in a spreadsheet is very difficult to track. Those are the challenges that we see in manual certificate management. The requirements that we can see from the perspective of managing modern certificate management and a zero trust world is we need to be able to think about automation. We're moving to digital automation or digital transformation. And so we're automating those things to be able to reduce human interaction. We want to be able to reduce human interaction, reduce operational overhead, and move to efficiency to be able to understand that, yes, our certificates are always up to date. We need real-time monitoring and visibility. For me, if it's one step that you do today that you come away from this presentation is that we need to be able to inventory all of our certificates, inventory them, understand what encryption protocols they're using, understand how secure those protocols are, and then understand how to move that into full, complete automation. I would be very happy that we've accomplished that within presenting this to you today. We want to be able to have seamless integration within existing IT systems because what I talked about earlier is certificate management is akin to being able to use identity and access management. Identity and access management and certificate management come together. So therefore, then I want to be able to integrate my certificate management system into my identity-based systems or into my directory services to be able to ensure that I'm doing user-based and device-based certificate management. So seamless integration becomes critically important. And then scalability for hybrid and cloud environments, meaning I've got hybrid compute on site. I have a cloud compute, and I need to be able to build a trust bridge or build trust between those two. I use certificates to be able to do that. And therefore, then the more cloud services that I go into, the more trust that I need to be able to create between the certificates. Therefore, then I use more certificates. And then in the end, this is compliance. Being able to make sure that I have transactional authentication from a zero trust perspective, but then at the end, this is being able to have auditability. I did all of these audits relative to the transactions, and I've got all of the transactions recorded to be able to understand, and I then have that full complete inventory of the certificates. So this is critically important in that zero trust, in that digital trust world. The solution, automated certificate lifecycle management. Automated certificate lifecycle management. So when we start, we want to talk about secure access, role-based access into the system to be able to control secure management and being able to control all of the keys to the kingdom. That's the PKI keys of being able to create the certificates in the first place. Seamless integration with Active Directory and ticketing systems and ITSM systems along with security frameworks. Automation of issuance, renewal, revocation of those certificates so that when a certificate is about to expire, it automatically recreates the certificate or it revocates the certificate, but then that gives you real-time alerting and proactive monitoring, which is your administrator knows that the certificate is either being renewed or revocated, and then at that point you don't run into systems outages like we talked about. That's the solution, really, in the end. So our solution for this for Certificate Lifecycle Management is what we call PkeyFx. And what PkeyFx is an appliance-based solution. And the reason why we build an appliance is because it has an integrated hardware security module. And that hardware security module stores all of those keys, the keys of PKI, into that hardware security module. And that then is what you want to be able to physically protect. That's why we create a physical appliance. Then the software that comes on, and the PkeyFx software is a GUI-based solution that has a certificate authority manager built into it and a certificate lifecycle manager built into it. So the certificate authority manager, I can create certificate authorities, I can create registration authorities, I can issue certificates. With Certificate Lifecycle Manager, I can then do automation, and I can automate those certificates, the issuance, the revocation of those certificates. So what does it do for me? It eliminates manual certificate management, which is what I've been trying to focus towards. Is that if you've got systems that are no longer available, it's most likely the certificate has expired. And it's because of manual processes that certificate may have expired. Whereas if you do automated, at that point, then you are automatically making sure that those systems are automatically renewed. That then leaves you with simplification of the management, and it gives you enhanced security and compliance because now I can track everything from a singular system, and I give scalability because I can scale your business up relative to the number of certificates that you need as you're growing digitally, and it gives you a lower total cost of ownership. Small to medium business customers and mid-enterprises may not experience this, but enterprise customers do. Every single department buys a different certificate management solution, and then they need to be able to trim that down into a singular solution so that they can have full, complete visibility across the entire enterprise. That's where you'd start to see greater degree and lower total cost of ownership. I've kind of gone over this already. On the left-hand side, what is PkeyFx? On the right-hand side, the certificate usages. And then at the bottom, authentication and encryption. And so authentication and encryption, we need to be able to authenticate the users, their devices. So that's the mobile device, the laptops. We also need to be able to authenticate the networking equipment, the firewalls, the routers, all of those sort of things, the load balancers. And then we also need to be able to authenticate cloud services and being able to create trust between those services and encrypt data between those services. On the right-hand side is the applications. So I can secure websites with certificates. I can do client authentication and secure devices with certificates. I can secure VPN with certificates. I can secure email in multiple different forms of email, all the different types of email. I can also do document signing. And what you can't see underneath me right now is beyond document signing is code signing is code signing, which is being able to secure code with certificates as well. So the key features of our PkeyFx appliance is it's a simplified GUI interface. So instead of having systems all over the place, you have it all within one singular GUI. The ability of being able to create certificate authorities, registration authorities, being able to do certificate lifecycle management and the automation of certificates, and then having the integrated hardware security module that is giving you the secure storage of those keys, and then high availability, scalability, and role-based access for large enterprise, but also for customers. Small to medium and small to medium business need to be able to have role-based access control, which is being able to control who can gain access to what keys within the system themselves. So we need to be able to choose and choose PkeyFx because of the power of automation and integration. We can eliminate manual processes, we can eliminate the human errors, and we can eliminate service disruptions by moving into an automated solution. We can also assure continuous compliance because we're now transactionally authenticating every transaction, and we're being able to log and report every single one of those. And then we can manage certificates not only on our on-prem solution, but across all of the different cloud resources that we have. That's the reason why I would choose PkeyFx for for my needs, right? So what are the solutions benefits of PkeyFx? Well, it's a public key infrastructure and certificate lifecycle management solution that allows you to be able to build digital trust and automation and assurance across all of your systems in your enterprise. It becomes cost effective, giving a lower cost of ownership because we're collapsing multiple systems into a singular system. It helps eliminate manual processes, moves things to automation so we can use human beings to be able to become more efficient. We enhance security because we're now looking at and renewing certificates on a regular basis, and we're looking at the encryption protocols that are being used, the encryption algorithms that are being used to be able to enhance that security, and you gain operational efficiency because we're eliminating that manual process. And now we're becoming a greater degree of regulatory compliant because we're now keeping track of absolutely everything, which then gives you comprehensive monitoring and reporting. That's the benefits of PkeyFx. I've gone through the use cases a little bit, and I'll just simply skim over them here again, which is web-based certificates. I need to be able to do certificates of inbound users into my applications. I can also have my applications from the inside where I'm authenticating users on the inside and then encrypting traffic to my secure applications. And that's the client authentication and SSL certificates being used in combination. We then have VPN certificates, which is a software VPN or a hardware appliance, but then applying certificates to those devices, being able to ensure that if somebody removes a device or tries to take the code from a software perspective to establish another VPN connection, they're not able to do it because the certificates are there. Email signing for all of the different email protocols, being able to secure email, document signing from the perspective of securing documents for signed documents, those sort of things, and then code signing from the perspective of software integrity or software update integrity, being able to share software updates with your clients and being able to then ensure that it is what you send to them. So every vertical is using certificates. There's pharmaceutical, energy and utilities, healthcare, education, manufacturing. They use certificates in different ways. As an example, we use manufacturing. We can use manufacturing from the perspective of certificates on the manufacturing plant floor to be able to ensure authentic communication between different devices, to be able to ensure that the communication is not tampered with, so that when they're manufacturing a product, the product integrity is there. From an education perspective, online applications, being able to ensure that a user that is taking a test is actually the user and it's the assigned device, so that it's authenticating the user and the device, being able to make sure that the student data is heavily protected. Healthcare, from the perspective of being able to share information with the EHR or PHR, so electronic health record or personal health record, being able to have the user interact and doing it within a secure way. Energy and utilities, I'll just use one example, is being able to look at your energy usage and your bill online actively and being able to do that in real time. Being able to authenticate into their systems or being able to authenticate into their back-end systems to be able to understand what your current usage is. And then pharmaceutical, being able to use the manufacturing process, again, being able to ensure that nothing has been tampered with from the perspective of the data and being able to share that data. So why did customers choose us? Well, we have expertise within digital security, we have expertise within identity and access management, and we saw this heavy gap from the perspective of device and device security and not having enough solutions relative from PKI to certificate lifecycle management. And then we also offer support and comprehensive guides through digital transformation. We're digital transformation experts at ISSQUARED. I moved from Fortinet over to ISSQUARED because of the vision that this company has, and that it's critically important that we take the product, we take the solution, and that the consulting and the professional services, and we combine them all together to be able to give you a full, complete solution. And that's why we're leading with customers from the perspective of what we're doing within PKI and Certificate Lifecycle Management. I've kind of gone through a little bit of why ISSQUARED. For many of you, we're your trusted partner today. We want to continue to have that trust. For some of you who you have not used us before, we want to continue to build that trust. We want to be able to establish that handshake with you of being able to say we are a trustworthy partner. And from that, we have expertise, and that we have also innovation. And that expertise is identity-based, I talked about earlier, extending it into certificates, being able to combine the two, and being able to offer solutions along with professional services, consulting services that we deliver all of our products within a full, complete solutions package. It's critically important because when we take a look at most vendors will offer a product, but then they don't necessarily offer all of the consulting and professional services on the back end of it. We offer that from a full front to back of working with a customer from the perspective of that solutions. And that's why I would choose ISSQUARED, which leads into our lifecycle management approach. With most customers, we'll start off with an assessment. What do you need? Where are you at? How many certificates are you using? In many circumstances, that's going to be a pre-sales assessment. And in other circumstances, we may end up getting professional services involved to go into a deeper assessment for you. And in those deeper assessments, then at that point, we go into architecture. So we understand what your current environment looks like. We then understand where you want to go and what your objectives are and what your business objectives are. We do the assessment. We then move into architecture is, okay, how do we get there? Then we move into the deployment side of the equation and support and supportability of the products and solution to then work with you on lifecycle management of saying, okay, this product and this solution that we're putting in place is good for a period of time, but we need to be able to work with you on how we address, how we life cycle this product or this solution over the course of time. And so that, for me, is about being able to give end-to-end consulting and professional services, being able to move and work with our customers from the perspective of true partnership. That's really the value of ISSQUARED in my mind. And so PkeyFx can transform certificate management, moving you from manual certificate management into automation, just like every other system that we're talking about moving into automation, which then moves into that digital transformation initiative to being able to focus towards outcomes and that business outcomes. That's what PkeyFx allows you to do. And I'll stop there from the perspective of talking about PkeyFx and the problem space and the solution. I'd like you to offer to have you come and join me again on May 8th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to talk about backup, replication, and disaster recovery. If you want to learn more about PkeyFx, I would suggest that you send an email to our inside sales team. You'll see the email address on the slide here. So with that, I make myself available from the perspective of the product commercialization team. Our sales team, when you interface with them, will know how to get a hold of me. And if you interface with them, we can talk to you further about what PkeyFx is and how it can help your organization. Thank you for being here, and I really look forward to seeing you again on May the 8th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where we'll discuss backup, replication, and disaster recovery. Thank you for being here today.